My name's Bonnie Whiteside and I'm an Associate Early Literacy Consultant here at LPDS. And today I'm going to be talking to you all about phonics and more specifically Phase 5 phonics. So if you just bear with me 2 seconds whilst I share my screen. There we go. So in today's short video, I'm going to be providing some ideas for teaching Phase 5. I'm going to be exploring how to effectively use the classroom environment to support phonics, not just within your discrete phonics lessons, but across the curriculum. And finally, I'm going to be comparing some expectation of phonics application into writing from children who are secure in phases 3, 4 and 5. So when you begin to teach Phase 5, you start to look at your further graphemes. This is where the children learn a new spelling or a new grapheme to represent a phoneme or a sound that they already know. So for example, when they learn the grapheme AY to represent the phoneme A, it's really important to link this to their prior learning, which was, of course, when they learned the phoneme A in Phase 3, which was represented by the letters AI. So it's important to discuss those best guess rules and explore the patterns of when you might use a certain spelling of a grapheme. So if we start to add our words, which could be on candles, on our cakes, you can explore those patterns, and it's really nice that the children can discover those best bet rules or those patterns themselves. So the grapheme AI is usually used when it comes in the middle of a word. Of course, in the word aim, it comes at the beginning, so it's important we use the word usually. Then we move on to looking at the grapheme AY. Now this one is usually used at the end of words. Again, remember to always use the word usually or commonly found at the end of words, because there are words which break this rule. Of course, there's going to be one in your classroom, so you probably have a tray or a pot which says pencil crayons, and the children love to spot the word crayon and tell you that, miss, this word does not follow that rule. So it's important that you do explain this is a best guess rule for if you're not sure, but not every single word in our language follows this rule. You then move on to teaching your alternate pronunciations, and finally you teach the further spellings of phonemes the children already know. This is where phonics becomes much more complex and the children begin to learn 4, 5, sometimes 6 different graphemes to represent the same sound or the same phoneme. So as you teach throughout the week and you build up with a new spelling of that sound or a new grapheme to represent that sound, you could add another cake or whatever it is you choose to use and explore the patterns further. So as I add the candles to the cakes this time, the children will discover the rules themselves. So AI is usually only in the middle of the words. You would obviously spot the most common. Now, if you added more candles than what I've done, you'd see that the split digraph A is the most common spelling of the A sound. You could write so many candles for this cake and it would clearly be a common spelling of the phoneme A. We've already discussed that AY is usually only at the end of words. And of course, it would also stand out which spellings of that sound are the rare spellings, or which graphemes are rare or the most uncommon. This helps children to apply it in their writing. So if they're not sure which spelling of A to use, they think, well, it's probably not going to be one of the rare spellings because we would probably have seen that word before. It's one of the most common, and then which one of the A spellings could it be? Well, does it come in the middle? Does it come at the end? And they can use the process of elimination to use their best guess rules and think about which spelling of that sound to apply within the word in their writing. Be creative with this, match it to your children's interests. So basically, you could have some laminated cakes, just like on my PowerPoint. You could put all your different spellings of A on those cakes, and you could put your words on the candles. Build them up throughout the week and explore those patterns and best guess rules. You can also apply this to other themes. So you could have your clouds with your different spellings of A, and then you could have your aeroplanes with the different words on. And here the children would explore the best guess rules, the patterns of when to use which spellings of the same sounds within words. Other ideas include things like football nets, and you could have your footballs with the different words on. You could have your toadstools with different fairies on. You could have things like lily pads with your frogs on, and build them up throughout the week and spot those patterns. So you can also get posters to represent this as well, and they just confirm those rules really. And you can see on the poster it says overall the most common is a split digraph A. AI is usually in the middle of words, AI usually at the end of words, and it also highlights the rare graphemes too. This is a really nice game to encourage those discussions and the thought process of which spelling to use of the same sound. So if you wrote play with the different graphemes to represent the A sound, the children could all have a red card, an orange card and a green card. They can say, show me which one looks correct to you. And obviously you can have those really, really wonderful discussions such as, well, would it be AI? Well, no, because usually AI comes in the middle of a word, but sometimes it comes at the start. We never see it at the end of a word. Do we think it could be the green spelling of A? Well, that is one of our rare graphemes. And there was only a few words when we did that on that cake. So, and play wasn't one of them. And actually, it's probably going to be the orange card, because when we hear A at the end of a word, that's usually spelt with the grapheme AY. So it's really nice there to assess whether your children are picking up those patterns and those best guess rules. So phonics within the classroom. This is just one example of how it could be done, but there, as you can see, there's the phase 3 graphemes on the wall. Now, as you teach a new grapheme to represent that phoneme, you could build this wall up throughout your phonics lessons. So for example, when I taught the grapheme AY, I could add that on. I've used an elephant here, but you can use anything. And then you create this wall, which will fill up as you teach more and more graphemes to represent the same phoneme. So when the children are doing their independent writing opportunities, you can say, and they say, Miss, which spelling of A would it be? We'll go over to the wall, look at the ones we've learnt, think about your best guess rules. Which one do you think it's more likely to be? And the children can start to make those decisions themselves. Tricky word walls used in the same way. As long as when you're teaching, you're doing your shared writes, you use these walls too, because you need to model how to use them correctly, and then the children will use them in the same way. So for example, if you were writing a sentence such as, she went to their house, and you got to the word there, you could stop and say, oh, it's a tricky word. Where's our tricky word wall, everybody? Everybody points at the tricky word wall. Right, I'm going to go over to my tricky word wall because I'm not sure how to spell that tricky word and I can't sound it out. Now, whereabouts would I find my phase 5 tricky words? Right, can anybody come and find the tricky word there? Pull it off the wall, take it to your shared write, apply it within your writing and put the word back. This encourages the children to do the same when they're doing their own writing opportunities as well. The best guess posters or the best bet posters, it's a really nice idea to have those displayed as well. And again, in your shared writes, refer to these posters. Oh, right, I need to spell night. So I'm going to find my I best guess poster. That's the yellow one. Everybody look at the yellow one. Now, the most common spelling of I is a split digraph. But hang on a minute, it says that at the end of a word, or it's followed by a T, then we use the trigraph IGH. Let's sound out night again. Night. It's followed by a T. That means it's more than likely going to be IGH. And that models the thought process for the children so that when they go to write that word, that they have exactly the same thought process and they apply those best guess rules and patterns. So moving on to what application might look like within a child's writing. It's really important that within a child's writing, you expect what they have learned in phonics so far and their previous learning. So you wouldn't mark a spelling of a grapheme wrong if a child has not been exposed to that yet. So if we look at the example here, the phase 3 example, you can see it says, I like to go to the park with my sister. She is so kind and we like to play a good game called Stuck in the Mud. One day, some other people from the swings asked whether they could join in. It was the best day ever. Now, this is a beautiful piece of writing to represent a child who is secure at phase 3. That's because you can see we've got the tricky words such as my, she. We've got lots of phase 3 content there. We don't have the tricky word some that spell S-U-M, but of course this child might not know that yet because they've not completed their phase 4 phonics. You can see that in game, they've used the grapheme AI. This is because they haven't learned the split digraph A yet, because of course they would learn that within phase 5. When it says she is so kind, this child would definitely not know their alternate spelling of I, which is just the letter I by itself, because that is what they would learn in phase 5, alternate pronunciations. You can see though that within here they have got some phase 4 elements such as like. That's just because this child's been exposed to words from phase 4 in shared write, texts around the classroom. It's been discussed within lots of writing opportunities, and that child has seen that word so many times that they now know how to spell the word like, even though it's not been taught discreetly within a phonics lesson. So it's really nice that you start to see that in the writing as well. You can see that it says that some other people from the swings asked. We've not got the R in from. That's because this child has not done their adjacent consonants yet in phase 4. However, they will have been exposed to them within the phase 3 teaching, but they've not yet applied that in their writing. But you can see they've applied it in swing because it's a little bit easier to hear the S and the W in that word. They haven't spelt asked correctly because this is a phase 5 tricky word. And of course, you wouldn't expect that yet from a child who is working within phase 3. In the phase 4 example of writing, you can see they've got all their phase 3 content. They've spelt sister, which is a polysyllabic word. They've spelt tricky words so, like. They still haven't spelt kind correctly because they've not learnt their alternate pronunciations in phase 5. They've picked up the word play. They've probably seen that on our daily timetable. They've seen that word lots and lots and lots. They've been exposed to that word and they've started to apply that in the writing a little bit sooner than what you would expect. They've spelt from correctly. They've spelt swings. They've got the G and the S at the end in swings. They've got tricky word they. And in the it was the best day ever, they've got the adjacent consonants at the end of the word best as well. Now, moving on to what a phase 5 child might produce, a child who's secure at phase 5, you can see at the bottom here, they've got their phase 2, their phase 3 tricky words, their phase 4, and you can also see some correct phase 5 tricky words. So you've got things like the word people spelt correctly. We can see the word asked. We can see the word could with the O-U-L-D. They've got their adjacent consonants there, great. We've even got some split digraphs. For example, in the word game, they've written G-A-M-E. In play, they've applied the correct spelling of the grapheme A. And then the word kind, this child has spelt kind correctly. They've learnt that an I by itself can be pronounced as an I, and they've recognised that the word kind is spelt like that. This is the only child out of the 3 that hasn't used the grapheme I-G-H. So you can see there the progression throughout the phases. Now, just to make this a little bit clearer for you, I've created a colour-coded version of that same text. So if a child was working at phase 2, you would only expect the child to correct those orange words because you've taught those and that is what you would expect. Now, if a child was secure at phase 3, you would expect all of the orange and all of the dark purple. This is because that would contain their phase 3 graphemes, their phase 3 tricky words, and their phase 2 content. Now, if a child was secure at phase 4, you can see you would expect the green, the dark purple, and the orange. And finally, if a child was secure at phase 5, you could expect all of it to be written with a very plausible phonetic attempt. They may have used an incorrect spelling of the same phoneme, but it would be applied using their best guess rules, using the patterns that they have explored within your phonics lessons.
Hi everyone, my name's Clare Cherry and I'm the Early Literacy Consultant here at Lancashire Professional Development Service, and today I'm going to be talking to you all about phonics, particularly drilling into the teach part of the phonic teaching sequence and giving an explanation of how that can be taught in a fun and engaging way. So I am going to share my screen now. To have a look here, we've got the phonic teaching sequence there in front of us, the 4 parts, we call it the 4-part teaching sequence. And I have put some time frames on there of maybe a suggestion really of how long you might want to spend on each of those 4 parts. That we've got the revisit review, which is just a couple of minutes long. And in that revisit review, you would always be reviewing something that had been previously taught. So it might be a misconception. It might be something that you've noticed within guided reading or guided writing. It could be tricky words, high frequency words. It doesn't just have to be the graphemes that you do revisit review. Then we've got the teach part, and you can see there that that's sort of between 5 and 7 minutes long. And this is where you, the practitioner, is doing the majority of that teaching, introducing a new grapheme phoneme correspondence, blending and segmenting, and physically modelling those phonics skills within that part. Then we've got the practice, and this is where the children start to, I suppose, apply really what's being taught in the teach part, but just within words. So for example, if you've taught owl in the word cow in the teach part, then in the practice, the children will be either reading or writing owl words, lots of owl words, obviously in a fun and engaging way. And then finally, we've got the application, the apply part, which is just a couple of minutes long. And this is where we bring all the learning together. The application is a really, really important part of the phonic teaching sequence. It's where children then obviously apply what's been explicitly taught in the teach part within sentences. So it's reading or writing 1 or 2 sentences, again in that fun way. So it is just 20 minutes long. It does need to be really, really pacey. So hopefully the time frames there might just give you an idea of how to keep within the 20 minutes. So if we move on now, just having a look at teaching that new grapheme phoneme correspondence. So when we're teaching the new GPC, we use something called the 3-part example. I'm going to model that in just a little minute, what that might look like. And then also within the teach part, that it's then you, the practitioner, modelling, blending for reading and segmenting for spelling. So here we've got the 3-part sequence. Whenever you're introducing a new grapheme phoneme correspondence, it's useful to use this approach in the teach part. So we've got, you can see there, the 3 mantras. We've got hear it and say it. We've got see it and say it. And then finally, say it and write it. And that's the bit that's often missed out, or a misunderstanding, that letter formation isn't part of the phonic process. It is. So I will just go to model. So with the hear it and say it, so this is where obviously it's making sure that we're enunciating the phonemes correctly. The children haven't seen anything yet, and we really, really like, we've got a noisy box here, and inside my noisy box are all the phonemes in the entire world. Let's find out what it is. Are we ready? Listen carefully. Are we ready? Shh. 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 So that's the hear it and say it. And the children then might have a go at saying it as well. So it's my turn, your turn. You might have a microphone like so. So I would go shh, and the children would obviously copy shh, 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 shh. So like I said, that's your time there to be modelling that correct enunciation and encouraging the children with their correct enunciation, no schwaring. Then we get to the next part, the see it and say it. And this is where the children physically see, obviously, the grapheme. And in this case, it is actually a digraph. You can see there on the screen, we've got the digraph shh. And we do encourage using the language as well, that terminology, and also popping in here at this part letter names as well. So it's the S and the H, and together it makes the phoneme shh. It's a digraph, 2 letters that make one sound. I've drawn a sound button under there, and let's say the phoneme. Let's look at that digraph and say the phoneme shh, 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 shh. So that's the see it and say it. We might bring our microphones back again. Shh, 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 shh. And then the final part there is say it and write it. And like I said, this is where we start to have a look at that letter formation. It's really useful to have a handwriting policy and follow, so all the staff are following whatever pattern it is that you use during the letter formation process. So I am just going to model a pattern that you might use or you might know. It's up to you again in your policy whether you do cursive, whether you have the lead in or you don't. I'm just going to model with that lead in as well. So this is where I'm going to show what it looks like, and we lead in, slither down the snake. It's useful to join digraphs. Lead up the horse, down the horse, over his back and down to his tail, like so. So we might have another go with our fingers. Again, I'm modelling that pattern for the formation. The children might do it writing in the air. Go in your pocket and pull out your magical pen, or stand up with your pretend lightsaber and do it. So the children are doing that air writing whilst obviously over the top you are saying that pattern as well. They could do it on the floor, on the friend's back. So we're not at this point actually getting whiteboards out, but the children are just having a go forming. So we're making the link obviously between the phoneme, between what it looks like there and using that terminology, and then finally you can see that we've got that handwriting or letter formation there as well. So that's what we call the 3-part sequence or 3-part example that's useful when you're introducing a new GPC. And then we move on to actually pop in that new learning, the new GPC, within a phoneme frame and using sound buttons to model the blending process. So we still advocate using sound buttons and phoneme frames, that they are a really, really simple strategy that really works and supports blending and segmenting. So we move through and we select a word to orally segment and blend using that newly taught GPC. So the example there might be the word ship, and this is where you might use your phoneme count or phoneme fingers, or you might use another strategy, Fred talk, or you might use robot arms to segment or chop up the phonemes in the word. Okay, so we're just going to do it orally, and I'm going to model with Fred talk. So we've got ship, the word ship, ship, and that action is blending back together, ship. So that obviously supports the spelling process there. Then we might model with another word using that phoneme frame. So you can see the example on the screen there is shop. Again, using that phoneme count, phoneme fingers, whatever strategy you use to segment is absolutely fine. But again, that consistent strategy throughout school. So I'll use my Fred talk again. So we've got shop, we've got the word shop. Let's see if we can break it up. Segment, shop. And then that's where you would pop that within a phoneme frame. So it might be as simple as drawing the phoneme frame on your whiteboard or interactive whiteboard. And again, this is where you could model that formation. So what's the first phoneme? We need to find the grapheme that represents that phoneme. Oh, I remember it's a digraph. Can we remember the pattern? Leading, slither down the snake, join it up, leading up the horse, down the horse, over his back to his tail. And obviously you continue through the word or the word shop. Right, so shop. Then we then use sound buttons to model blending through the words. So again, you can see there on the screen, we've got the word posh, and this is where you press the sound buttons to help blending. So sound buttons supports the blending process. So we've got posh, posh. We blend together to read the word. Posh, posh. We want that smooth reading through the word. Okay, I will just stop sharing there. So thank you very much. I hope that's been useful, where we've looked explicitly at the teach part of the phonic teaching sequence. Okay, thanks for listening, and bye for now.